J.B. John Barrymore, actor, born 1882, died 1942. Crown Prince of America's royal family of actors with a penchant for alcohol and chorus girls, John Barrymore's self-destructive rollercoaster career went from the zenith of his Shakespearean performance to the nadir of self-parody in Hollywood B-movies. A massive drinker who, after a particularly strenuous binge, actually slept through the Great San Francisco earthquake of 1906. After waking up, he must have thought it the worst hangover of all time. It's been estimated that during his 40 years in show business, Barrymore consumed 640 barrels of hard liquor. As he once so eloquently put it, "You can't drown yourself in drink. I tried. You float." He was born in Philadelphia to theatrical parents. His father, Maurice, a dashing leading man. When he was aged 11, John's mother died of tuberculosis, called consumption for a long time during his childhood as well, which is what one of Edgar Allan Poe's parents died of, I think. But he's actually in this book, so, look forward to that. One day, whatever, in the near-ish future. And with undue haste, his father married again, this time to a much younger woman who thought nothing of seducing her stepson when he was just 14 years old. It may have been this event that turned Barrymore to alcohol, as he felt pangs of guilt for years afterwards. He got expelled from boarding schools for drinking and smoking and generally raising hell. It may have also left him with a skewed opinion of women. He'd subsequently marry 4 times and have innumerable mistresses. When Barrymore was 20, he witnessed his father suffer a nervous breakdown on stage. The ravings grew so violent that his son had little choice but to escort his father off to the nearest loony bin. The cause of the illness was being blamed on syphilis. Maurice really was quite balmy, strangling his own daughter Ethel when she paid him a visit. He died 5 years later, never quite recapturing all his marbles. Eschewing an early interest in art to go into the family business, Barrymore established himself on Broadway with dynamic portrayals of Richard III and Hamlet. Critics proclaimed him one of the greatest actors alive, but drink had already taken him over. During a shit-faced performance of Hamlet, he momentarily had to leave the stage in order to vomit. The inevitable defection to Hollywood was not long in coming. There, Barrymore quickly became infamous for his drunken off-screen antics, such as engaging in a 10-minute fist fight with producer Myron Selznick. Barrymore emerged the worse for wear, sporting 2 black eyes. He saw films primarily as a necessary evil, a way to make money, nothing more, and screen acting as a lowly art form. "There are lots of methods," he declared. "Mine involves a lot of talent, glass, and some crack arts." Going to Adolf Zukor, movie mogul and founder of Paramount Pictures, Barrymore deliberately instigated bust-ups on his film sets, storming out in a huff just so he could have a crafty drink. He was trouble, all right. "His beginning a picture was a signal for us to go on the alert," said Zukor. Often Barrymore went missing altogether during filming, and Zukor would send assistants to check every saloon and bar in town and bring him back. One time he couldn't be traced at all. No one had seen him. Director James Kirkwood volunteered to scout around and finally unearthed Barrymore drinking at the famous Actors Club, The Players. "I've got him," he told Zukor over the phone, "and he's coming back with me." Barrymore had indeed agreed to return to the studio to make Kirkwood's picture, but on one condition, that he can join him for one last drink. Well, that last drink led to another and another and another. 3 days later, both men finally appeared on set. Kirkwood considerably wiser. Hired to play Captain Ahab in a movie adaptation of Moby Dick, studio head Jack Warner and director Lloyd Bacon paid Barrymore a visit at his hotel suite. Opening the door, Barrymore's eyes were glazed, his complexion like that of a corpse. His hair tangled heap upon his scalp, and it looked he hadn't shaved since Christmas. "That's a great make-up job, John. You'll make a tough-looking Ahab," said Warner innocently. That's not makeup, Bacon argued. It's a hangover. Warner then needed to use the bathroom, but was shocked to find the bathtub full of champagne bottles. My God, Barrymore, what's all this stuff for? The actor smiled. Earrings. Care for some? By the early 1930s, Barrymore's reckless drinking and mercurial disregard for his personal well-being had got so bad that his wife, Dolores, insisted he enter a hospital for treatment. But all that resulted in were violent attacks on nurses who refused to bring him alcohol. Her next plan of action was a quiet cruise off Canada, a dry one. It proved too much for poor Barrymore. So desperate for anything to drink, he downed his wife's perfume and mouthwash. When they dropped anchor at Vancouver, Barrymore made a bolt for shore, hoping to lose himself in a waterfront bar, but his nurse and his wife both grabbed a hold of him. In the ensuing skirmish, the nurse had her nose broken, and Dolores was held violently to the deck. Poor cow. Like father, like son, like grandfather, and also Drew Barrymore's old man wasn't that much better. It's like it's a curse to be a man in that family. So she dodged a bullet. I wonder if she has like a son or something. I wouldn't know. If anyone gets to this point and can be asked getting to this point, 6.5 minutes in, feel free to chin wag with me and comment and stuff like that, and going back to it, those of you who are up on the Barrymore family, specifically Drew, does she have kids? Does she have a son? And is he at risk at inheriting the Barrymore patriarchal curse, as it were? Drinking, whoring, that kind of thing. All right, then. Barrymore's last spouse was actress Elaine Barry, 35 years his junior. They appeared in one play together, My Dear Children, which included a scene where Barrymore held her in his lap and roundly spanked her. Jesus Christ. God knows what his father was like. I mean, he got syphilis. I'll say no more. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, as, Eric Idle said in a skit. Whatever. Their relationship scandalized depression-hit America, as Barrymore's amorous activities usually did. One night, while soon to be curried and mashed, he accidentally went into the women's restroom. Yeah, right. I don't think he did it accidentally. He was a dirty old bugger. Like I said, like father, like son. Proceeded to relieve his bladder in a potted plant. A woman standing nearby reminded that the room was for ladies exclusively. Turning round, his penis still exposed, of course. Barrymore responded, So, madam, is this, but every now and again, I'm compelled to run a little water through it. By the mid-1930s, after years of hard living, Barrymore's matinee looks had given way to haggard disillusionment, and, if you've seen Svengali, you'll think only of Svengali. You will only think of John Barrymore. Yeah, anyway, I'll stop with the impression. He looked old in there. I mean, Rasputin. Yeah, Svengali supposed to be Grigory Rasputin. He wasn't that old when he died. In fact, he didn't even look that old and weary and scruffy. But it fit the whole aesthetic of the mythology behind it, I suppose. As the Romanov thing was only about, 12 to 13 years, 15 years, if that. Maybe 10, whatever. It wasn't that long ago in comparison to when the film was out, But yeah, I mean, he probably didn't have to try that hard to look like crap. Right, where were we? His body battered by numerous alcohol-related illnesses, his psyche the harbinger of chronic spells of near insanity. No longer able to remember his lines, underlings were hired to hold large blackboards with his dialogue on them, just out of camera range. It was pitiful. Once acclaimed as the greatest living actor, Barrymore, in the end, would scarcely find work except in bargain basement tosh, having thrown away his promise with drinking and whoring. The trouble with Jack, said Charlie Chaplin, was that he had a naive, romantic conception of himself as a genius doomed to self-destruction, which he eventually achieved in a vulgar, boisterous way by drinking himself to death. When a doctor suggested that he abandon wine, women, and song, Barrymore asked if he had to quit everything at once. "No, you can taper off," was the advice. "Then I shall quit singing," said Barrymore. In the last few years of his life, Barrymore got pally with Errol Flynn after arriving at the actor's house unannounced, following an argument with his wife and asking for a bed for the night. The 3 weeks he ended up staying with the most harrowing Flynn could ever remember, worse than fighting crocodiles in the depths of New Guinea. One of the more unsightly habits that Barrymore excelled in was urinating out of the window, sometimes splashing passers-by. Worried about Barrymore's 100% proof piss that was washing the varnish of his window sills, Flynn complained, "For God's sake, can't you do it somewhere else?" Barrymore looked suitably admonished. "Certainly, my lad." So he took to pissing in the fireplace, and sometimes even in wardrobes. He was on a He was on a runway trolley to hell, basically. At night he'd wake up screaming, or wander about pillaged, with no sense of where he was. Once he stumbled into the clothes closet and couldn't get out. Screaming, he felt things jabbing and ticking the back of his neck, or tickling, even, spasmoid. "Bats!" he exclaimed, as Flynn came rushing in. "Your house is full of bats!" Flynn had to explain that what he felt were coat hangers. Unable to take any more, fearful that his house might not be standing this time next week, Flynn urged Barrymore's wife to take him back. Like the great actor he was, Barrymore took numerous curtain calls before finally succumbing to the inevitable final performance. More than once he'd be rushed to hospital with friends, convinced this time he was actually going to die. He'd be in comas, coming out of them just long enough to ask a nurse to fetch him a drink. Those who'd fall for his charms and accede to his wishes were fired. He was a rascal, right to the end. After emerging from one particular coma that lasted 3 days, Barrymore opened his eyes and beheld quite the ugliest, roughest-looking female nurse the American medical profession could bustle up. Wondering what kind of hell he'd woken up in, Barrymore murmured, "God!" Then paused, looked at her again and said, "Well, get in anyway, honey." There's a story of a close-to-death Barrymore, sick in bed, legs grotesquely swollen with his fluid his body couldn't pass, asking for his 21-year-old daughter Diana to fetch a prostitute for him. Probably the same age as dirty old bastard. Anyway, Diana herself would succumb to alcohol and drug addiction, killing herself aged 38. Oh. I mean, I've read this about before, but I forgot about that. So there was a woman in the family that destroyed herself. So, anyway, interesting. Then the final collapse. Bronchial pneumonia, hardening of the arteries, hemorrhaging ulcers, cirrhosis of the liver, he had the lot. For 10 days he faded and rallied, drifting in and out of consciousness. "Die?" he roared. "I should say not. No Barrymore would allow such a conventional thing to happen to him." When his friends, including Errol Flynn and director Raoul Walsh, heard of Barrymore's passing, they gathered at a bar to commiserate and celebrate the old duffer. Walsh left early, claiming he was too upset. In fact, he and 2 friends went to the funeral home and bribed the undertaker to lend them Barrymore's body. Transporting it to Flynn's house, it was propped up in a chair facing the door. Errol was 12 gauged when he was arrived, but after putting the light on, he very quickly got sober, staring as he was into the face of Barrymore. It was a hammer horror moment. Letting out a delirious scream, Flynn ran out of the house into Walsh and his cohorts. Relieved it was a prank and that Barrymore hadn't risen as one of the undead, Flynn retired to bed. "My heart was still pounding. I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night." Before he died, Barrymore left specific instructions that he be cremated, but his brother and sister insisted that his remain be buried. In 1980, Barrymore's son, John Drew, decided to grant his final wish and roped in his own son to help remove the body. As they entered the crypt, it was obvious that the casket had cracked some years before, and body fluids had leaked out to form a sort of gluey substance on the floor. They hauled the coffin into a waiting van and drove the short distance to the crematorium. As preparations were being made, John couldn't resist taking a peek inside at the old devil. He soon wished he hadn't. "Thank God I'm drunk," he told his son, "so I'll never remember it."